Good to see you. Well, kind of see you. Hear you. Good to hear you.
Likewise, I just got off the Peloton, so I will save you all from a sweaty mess.
I'm literally sitting at my dentist's parking lot because I just got my teeth cleaned, no cavities, never have had one. That's good.
That's a win.
Okay, I think,
Peloton, so I will save you all from a sweaty mess.
okay, guys,
got my teeth cleaned, no cavities.
we are live. We are live. So we are going to go ahead and get started, okay?
You want me to start? All right. Welcome to 2023 Public Safety Week Virtual Safety Technology Webinar. My name is Emmanuel Remy, and I'm honored to serve as your Columbus City Council member and chair of the Public Safety Committee. In this role, I have the responsibility of bringing creative ideas and solutions to our public safety needs. And one of these needs is bringing our community and safety forces together for conversation, relationship building, and growth. That's why this year, I launched the inaugural Public Safety Week in partnership with Columbus Police and Columbus Fire. We have enjoyed a full week so far with a CPR and Narcan training community conversation, Milo Grogan block party last night, and more. Today on the calendar is this important conversation to bring you information about some of the most important pieces of technology in the public safety space today here in the city of Columbus. Thank you to Axon for being a great partner. Last year, we came together through the National League of Cities Capstone Challenge, where Columbus and Axon partnered to bring transparency and conversation to the Columbus community by hosting 2 Share the Table events. I'm thankful to Axon CEO and founder Rick Smith for being here today, along with members of your incredible team, to do a virtual presentation to help our residents learn more about your company and the important safety technology used by Columbus Police. Thank you to Assistant Chief Gregory Bodker for joining us today, as well as he has been a great leader at our Share the Table events and is here today to give the Columbus Police lens and perspective when it comes to our safety tech. Before I turn it over to AC Bodker, I want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in today. If you haven't already shared this to your social media pages, I encourage you to do just that to ensure we have as many residents as possible tuning in. With that, I'd like to turn it over to AC Bodker for a brief overview of the Columbus Police's partnership with Axon and why having the best safety technology is important to policing. AC?
Thank you, Council Member Remy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Bodker, Chief of Columbus Division of Police. We are very fortunate in Columbus to partner with Axon for more than just body camera technology. We were very fortunate last year that the city worked to fund the Body 3, which is the new Axon body camera. Additionally, during that time, we also were fortunate enough to work with Axon to it's a total of 2,105 body cameras were approved, as well as a refresh on the body camera hardware. You may remember Columbus Division Police has had body cameras since 2016. However, Axon is new technology that we shifted to in 2022. In addition to the body-worn cameras, we added 450 in-car cameras, 16 interview room cameras. Those are cameras that monitor our interview rooms, not only in our division headquarters, but in some of our outlying interview rooms, and also a body-worn camera technology for our technical teams. The division also utilizes these another product from Axon, and all in all, the officers, every uniformed officer in the division is currently issued a body-worn camera. Their uniform to wear those is codified under city ordinance and also in our division policies. However, detectives are also issued body cameras, and when they are working over time, and many of them when working special duty, also wear body camera. We're very fortunate to have this technology and great partners at our council and great partners in the community. And we appreciate all of the work from Thank you very much.
Thank you, AC. I'm not sure if it was widespread, but I had some technology issues listening to what you just said. But if people concur, maybe try calling in to help eliminate that. But appreciate your support and your partnership. Now I have the pleasure to turn it over to Rick Smith and the Axon team. Thank you again for joining us today. The floor is all yours.
Awesome. If it's okay, I'm going to hand over to Shannon for a second, just to kind of introduce some of the members of our team.
Yeah, thank you. So really happy to be here. I'm actually born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, so always happy to be back to serve the city in different capacities through Axon. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce our team to you guys before we start presenting and things. So I'll go first, and then we can kick it off to Regina, Evan, and then we'll end with Frick because he's going to go into a little bit of background on our company. So hi everyone, my name is Shannon Moore. I am the director of our Global Strategic Community Impact team here at Axon.
Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Regina Holloway and I'm the VP of the Global Strategic Community Impact team. Evan?
Evan Bates, sales engineer. So essentially consider me a translator. Born and raised from Cleveland, Ohio. So that's either really, really good or really, really bad, depending on your views on that.
Shannon, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Thank you for saying that. Rick, we'll kick it off to you. You can, of course, introduce yourself and your background, the why behind Axon and the work that we're doing through the company and our history. Regina and I will talk more about our technology and communities. And then Evan will do a breakdown of Axon's body-worn cameras in Columbus. And we'll do some next steps after that. So Rick, I'll go ahead and kick it off to you.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for all the introductions. Councilmember Remy, appreciate it. And AC, your comments. We are delighted and honored to be a partner with the City of Columbus. A little bit of background. So I've been doing this now for 30 years. So it was 30 years ago this September. We started a company in a garage in Tucson, Arizona, with a mission of trying to make the bullet obsolete. So how did we get there? While I was in high school, I played football with a couple guys who shortly after high school were shot and killed on a Saturday night in an argument that started at a traffic light. By the way, Shannon, is my audio coming through okay?
Yep, everything is good.
Perfect. Before I go on too much, I want to make sure it's coming through okay. So Corey and Todd basically got in an argument with this motorist in his car, and they all pulled off into the parking lot of a local hotel. And within a matter of seconds, Corey and Todd were dead, and this gunman sped off in his car. Now, it turned out he was actually a businessman who had a gun in the glove box and just found himself in a situation that spun rapidly out of control. And the reason I share that is, you know, one thing that occurred to me is life is complex. It's not like the movies, right? When we grow up, we think of, you know, you play good guys and bad guys or whatever. But in the real world, again, like in this situation, I'm sure this guy who had a gun in his car had it there for the purpose of protecting himself. And he found himself in a situation where, like my two friends, they played college football at the time. They were kind of, you know, big and had a bit of a temper. And you could just imagine how nobody went into this, into that evening with any ill intentions. And yet the situation spun out of control and 3 lives were ruined. My friends are dead and this guy spent his life in jail. And it struck me that it's bizarre that we live in a world where we're still shooting bullets at people, right? I mean, I actually wrote a book called The End of Killing. If any of you are interested, it is my personal manifesto and really one for Axon that says we should not accept that killing people is the way forward. In fact, bullets have been around for around 900 years now. This is an ancient technology. I mean, we fought the Revolutionary War with bullets over 250 years ago. And if you think back to, transportation back then was riding a horse. Today we have airplanes and electric cars and rocket ships. Think how far we've come in medicine and everywhere else. And yet the way we stop a person if we feel threatened ourselves is fundamentally unchanged. We shoot them with bullets. Now, I'm also a bit of a child of science fiction, right? It didn't take much for me thinking about this problem to say, wouldn't it be great if we had Captain Kirk's phaser, right? We wouldn't have to shoot bullets at people anymore. And so as I began to research this, I discovered that a man named Jack Cover had the same idea back in the 1960s. And Jack was actually one of the scientists on the Apollo moon landing project. He left that to go work on non-lethal weapons because President Johnson in the 1960s had a commission after the shootings at Kent State University and the other protests in the 1960s where the American National Guard opened fire on American citizens. They said, we should never do this again. We need alternatives. And so Jack went to work on this device, ultimately called the taser, that was inspired by the Star Trek phaser. And long story short, for the first 30 years, the technology was very buggy. It didn't work very well. I was 23 when I found Jack, and we started in his garage to try to bring this technology to life. It took us about 7 years to get the underlying tech to really work well. And starting right around the year 2000, we began to launch taser weapons. We initially focused, by the way, on consumers for people to protect themselves. But what we found is we first had to kind of prove that the technology worked in the professional use space in public safety. Because public safety, right, these people carry guns and other weapons, and we rely on them for the most part to protect and keep society safe. So what a great place to start if we could give them other options than a bullet. And I'll be the first to tell you where we're at today. A taser is not yet as effective or reliable as a gun. So when I say we want to make the bullet obsolete, that is our long-term mission. It's going to take decades to get there. But I'm proud to announce that, I think across the board, we've been able to really build a lot of support for this idea. In fact, just about 9 months ago now, we came out and we publicly announced what we're calling our moonshot. And this is a way to really describe our mission in a way that's measurable. And effectively, our moonshot is we believe that we could cut gun-related deaths between police and the public by 50% over the next 10 years. So we pause for a second. What we're talking about is not only, we're talking about we want to take the most terrible outcomes of policing incidents where either a police officer is shot and killed or somebody is shot and killed by a police officer and find other ways to resolve that. And when we came up with this 50% number, we didn't just pull it out of the air. And the reason we're calling this a moonshot actually is inspired by the Apollo moon landing program in the 1960s, right? When Jack Kennedy stood at, I think it was Rice University, and he announced, we are going to put a man on the moon before this decade is out. That wasn't just some hope that he thought they could do. There was some science behind it. He had the smartest scientists in the world telling him it's going to be really hard, but it's doable. So we've been analyzing the number of instances where there's fatal outcomes in policing. And we estimate, after reading case by case, that we think we have a plan that could get to reducing that number of deaths by 50%. And it's really a three-part plan. There's three elements that get us there. So the first piece is better tools. We are making effective taser weapons, less lethal alternatives that are longer range and more effective. And we estimate by doing that, we could reduce the number by up to 40%, particularly people with knives or edged weapons. As we've read these cases of lethal force incidents, most of the time they don't happen immediately. There's a buildup, and during that buildup, sometimes they try to use different tools, and sometimes they don't work. And that's on us to create better, more effective alternatives. And if we can do that, again, we estimate we might be able to change 40% of these cases that ultimately escalated into lethal force through having better alternative tools. The next piece is better training, right? I think we all know there's no technology panacea that's going to suddenly make the world's ills go away. We also have to think about how we train the users. And there's another piece of great technology, virtual reality, that today to train a police officer in a realistic scenario is very difficult to do. You either have to have human actors or these large rooms with all sorts of equipment set up. Today, we can put a VR headset on a police officer, we can put them into a scene, and we can get lots of practice with the skills that they need to be able to deal with all these complex situations. So we believe this type of, not just VR, but training in general needs to continue to evolve with the tool sets. And then finally, we need better data. We need to be able to understand, if you want to solve a problem, you have to first understand it. And a great example I use is the airline industry, right? Airplanes are very complex devices, but they're very safe. And the reason they're safe is the aviation industry shares its data. So if there's ever even a near miss or a maintenance problem or something that looks like it might cause a problem, much less if there's an aviation accident, all that data is shared with Boeing and Airbus and all of the sub-suppliers so that entire industry can move quickly to resolve the problem to make aircraft and flying safer. We need to do the same thing in public safety. When President Obama had his Commission on 21st Century Policing, one of their strongest recommendations was we need a national database of use of force. And it does not exist to this day. In fact, if you want to understand officer-involved shootings, the best database you can find is at the Washington Post because that newspaper is tracking it. So we are partnering with a think tank out of Washington, D.C., called the Institute for Intergovernmental Research, where we're sponsoring to stand up a rigorous database on deaths involved in policing so that we have a better way to measure the problem we're all trying to solve together. So that is our moonshot. And when we think about technology, a big piece of this as well isn't just different weapons that can cause less harm. It's also how can we change behaviors? So after we launched the TASER back in the year 2000, we began to hear concerns about, hey, how are police using this? And frankly, we saw a lot of headlines saying that police are abusing people with tasers or misusing them. And so as we looked at that, we said, well, what could we do to solve those concerns? Well, wait a minute, what if we recorded what these officers were doing? Then we would all know, because obviously, if you talk to a police officer and they tell you what happened, sometimes that's very different from what you hear from members of the public. And it's very hard to know who to believe. Perhaps the greatest example of this was the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson, Missouri, right? The police officer's account of events was that he was in a fight for his life and had to defend his life, right? The account from other people was very different. In fact, some people said that Mr. Brown was trying to surrender with his hands up. Those are two very different accounts. We need to know what actually happened so that we know who to hold accountable. And ultimately, that's what got us into the body camera space. And with body cameras, we've actually seen some pretty dramatic effects where there's just actually a study, I believe, out of Brazil showing that with body cameras, they see shootings going down. We can see use of force incidents being reduced. And we can see officers themselves feeling safer in their jobs, knowing that there's going to be a recording of the complex situations that they're dealing with. So that's how we got into the body camera space. And we see all this stuff working together, where ultimately our goal is to tie together the body cameras to not only be able to record an incident so you can review it later, but we now have agencies like the Texas Medical Center Police in Houston, Texas. They're live streaming every call. Every time a police officer is out on duty on a call, they're streaming that to dispatch so that the dispatcher can actually see what's happening. And what they're finding is officers are actually very positive about this because it's helping the dispatchers know what sorts of resources to send out to that scene. The dispatcher can understand much better what's happening when they see it rather than just hearing some snippets over the radio. But the other side of things is it's also giving the agency a way to potentially intervene if a situation looks like it's spinning out of control. Command staff can be alerted in real time and can begin to intervene over the radio rather than watching the video several days later. So these are the types of things where we see this technology evolving over time to be able to give agencies and communities a better understanding of what officers are doing, give agencies a better ability to understand in real time what's happening, and to feed that back into these training loops so that when we see officers doing a great job, we can feed that back into training. And if we see areas where officers need some improvement, we can feed that back into training. So that's kind of a brief overview of the systems that we've built in our overall mission. Let me stop my screen share here. To be able to ultimately change outcomes. And I'll end by pointing out, I'm wearing one of our company t-shirts here. One of our values is to be obsessed. And what we mean by that is be obsessed about the problems we're trying to solve. Be obsessed about our customers. And 10 years ago, we thought of our customers, well, of course, our customers are the police department. But we've evolved our thinking to where now our customer, yes, it's the police department and it's the community that they serve. And so one thing that we've done in the past few years, we actually stood up an entire new function called Community Impact that Regina leads. And that's where it's our job not just to talk to police about what they need, but to talk to communities about what they feel is the needs for how their community is going to be policed. And what are the, for example, what are the potential negative consequences of technology that we're building? And this has been pretty transformative for us, where we're now hearing those concerns at the beginning when we're designing these products from both police and communities to try to make sure we're designing things that will maximize good outcomes and minimize the potential for abuse or misuse. Because ultimately, our goal is to build the communities we all want to live in, where we feel safe, equitably treated, and that our privacy is protected, while enabling public safety to do their jobs and keep us safe from some of the dangers that are present in our society. And so with that, I will hand off until I'll hang around for the Q&A, but maybe back to Shannon if you want to MC who we're going to have come up next.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rick, for really breaking that down. It's the why behind why we're here. And so we really appreciate you being here with us today. So next, we're going to transition into the work that we're doing in communities. So Regina and I will kind of explain what that looks like for Axon, what that looks like for our team. As Councilmember Remy mentioned earlier, and I believe AC Bacher, we had the privilege to do a capstone project with the City of Columbus to really build out our arm of education for our constituents for all the reasons that Rick just mentioned. And so to recap that project, we do want to show the video, which kind of culminated the end of the project for Columbus. We also partnered with the City of Little Rock. I won't show that video, but if you want to go to our website, you can definitely check it out there. But I'm going to share my screen now so you guys can see the work that you all did and what you showed up for in Columbus.
Specifically since 2020, we've been intentional about regaining trust within the community. We want to make sure that we're providing a high level of transparency to those that have lost that trust, and hopefully that all of us working together, both our partners like Axon, our police department, and government, are working very closely together to regain that trust by providing this high level of transparency.
There's a huge push on innovation. Pressure actually with state and local law enforcement, where it's like, hey, this is where the industry's going. How are you going to stay ahead of it? When you think of events like this, this really gives the community a chance to listen to what these government agencies are listening to as well from these vendors, to see if this makes sense for them, because at the end of the day, they are the end user, so they're going to be impacted the most by these changes.
Everything we do as public servants is a collaboration with the community. And so I think it's important, regardless of where you work within the city, what part of the city geographically or what your mission is, that you understand what the expectations are from the community. Specifically, when you're talking about technology, I think it's also important that the community understands what capabilities their police officers have. And so it's a partnership and a collaboration. So communication back and forth is really important.
One of the things that this event revealed to me was all the laws that we have around cameras and policing. And so one, as myself as a citizen, getting grounded in those, understanding how things work so I understand my rights and how to navigate them. And also talking and lobbying with our local law enforcement to make sure that everything's being presented in a fair fashion and that we have access to the information that we need.
Public safety has to be a very, very inclusive idea that we're all working together to co-create together. If it's public, it has to involve all stakeholders, and that means citizens, it means our agencies, and also means our leaders. Once you leave someone out, you leave out a voice that is necessary for creating actual public safety that works for all people. Awesome. So that is the work of Columbus and our partnership with you all that we are excited to continue to grow. We're going to go ahead and go into just explaining again more of what we're doing in communities. So let me get a little organized here. Like I said, we have a global strategic community impact team at Axon. We've had the privilege of working with communities across the country and in other countries like the UK and Canada. And we really have a conviction to be investing and co-creating public safety with all stakeholders. So that's law enforcement, it's communities, it's our elected officials, and centering community voice in all the work that we're doing. And so a lot of that means that we're educating folks. We have a council that we'll talk about later that's working really closely with our product teams to bake community voice into our product development cycle to make sure that we're building for racial equity and ethics in everything that we're doing and creating for both law enforcement, but also communities. So there's 4 pillars to our team and the work that we're doing here at Axon. It's putting tech equity at the center of all that we do. And so we have an Ethics and Equity Advisory Council that, like I said earlier, works with our product teams to build a muscle for racial equity and our product org and the products that we're putting into our communities. We're strategically investing in national and community relationships to make sure that they can further the work that they need to do to inform public safety for all stakeholders. And what we're here for today, we have an education leg to engage community members on the technology used in their communities. We are essentially the end user of our products, and we want to make sure that folks are informed on where their taxpayer dollars are going and what they're advocating for, and all the features that come with the ask around products like body-worn cameras or even a taser. And then we have our My90 engagement platform, which is an opportunity for community voice to be centered in their interactions with law enforcement. So there's dashboards that we're creating around that at Axon, as well as wellness programs for law enforcement. So this is our EEAC that I mentioned earlier. These are community leaders across the country. We have a council in the US, and we also have one in the UK. And these folks are the group that I mentioned that works really closely with our products to make sure that we're building that muscle again of racial equity. And a lot of them are in academia studying racial equity in tech. They're working with youth organizations and faith-based organizations and advocacy groups. And a lot of them have lived experiences around public safety or gun violence. Which for Regina will talk more about how we really like to center lived experience at our company, as marginalized voices are often left out in the development cycle. We want to make sure that we're centering that in everything that we're doing. And they work alongside our product teams to build out a racial equity toolkit and just assess the things that we're doing at the company. So I'm going to kick it off to Regina. She's going to talk more about herself and how we're centering lived experiences.
Sure. Thank you, Shannon. I just really want to take a few seconds, if you bear with me, to just thank AC Bodker and Councilman Remy again. They have allowed us to center these conversations since the very beginning. And their care for your community is very evident. So I'm very, very thankful to be here with all of you today. And I want to be clear that the experiences that we're talking about, it is coming from a very community-centered place, right? And so I often think, body-worn cameras are now an expected tool in public safety. They're expected by agencies, your agencies in Columbus, your agency in Columbus, by cities, by councilmen and women, and most importantly, by community members. And over the years, if we were to center the community view, there have been a bunch of atrocities that we've seen on body-worn cameras. But those atrocities have been happening for generations. And this is my personal story, a little bit about me. I'm from West Philadelphia. I grew up in the 80s during definitely a crack cocaine epidemic in the city. And there are a lot of things that have gone unseen prior to body-worn cameras. So if you take a look at this slide here, you'll see, when I was 8 years old, May 13th, 1985, this was the view from my community in West Philadelphia. The Philadelphia police had a longstanding conflict with a communal activist organization known as MOVE. And as that conflict progressed, the state police, with the approval of the mayor, dropped a satchel bomb on the house where this organization was, killing 11, including 5 children, and the entire neighborhood went up in flames. This shows the type of things that cameras were there not cameras, a lot of people are unaware of this atrocity. And so the cameras are so important in centering the community voice, likewise in centering the work that police do and figuring out policy changes. Next slide. Cameras also allow communities this power of bearing witness. And so I really like this quote that I read. It says, even family members who do not have direct experience of the trauma itself can feel the effects generations later. And this is where some of the conflict comes between agencies that are trying really, really hard to dig deep with their communities, and they're finding some backlash. Why aren't we able to communicate better? Why aren't we able to dig deeper? And it's because we have to address the conflicts that have happened and understand that those communities are dealing with generations of trauma. So obviously there were no body-worn cameras then, but this is the type of historical trauma that has not been captured on camera. And this is the struggle that community is dealing with in their ability to build better relationships with police. Next slide. As Rick was so helpful, so I won't have to spend a bunch on this slide, 2014 is really the year when you start to see an uptick of cameras after the death of Michael Brown, communities and police agencies wanting to understand what is happening during these interactions that we don't know about. And what we know is this is actually not a dig on cameras, it's a good thing. Body-worn cameras alone are not the solution to either police misconduct or poor community police relationships, but it is a transparency tool that helps us to bear witness, create policy changes, allow for better training and decisions about policies, procedures, laws, and leaders. So what do the cameras do? Often, and I feel like Councilman Remy and AC Bacher saw this happen in some of the community discussions we had, is that cameras alone are not a panacea, but they're a super important tool for us to dig deeper and get closer, for us to build relationships with our police agencies and build deeper relationships with our beloved community. So what do? They're going to uncover needed policy changes. They're going to show us what's possible. They're going to show us good policing sometimes. And they're going to demonstrate that challenges are deeper than officer-involved shootings, right? So how else can the cameras be used for training to change dynamics between community and police? They may provide evidence for civilian oversight and prosecution. They also may provide evidence for other cases in criminal court. They provide judges with evidence to help determine witness credibility. What they may not do, they may not completely stop bad behavior on either side, on the community side or the policing side. They may not totally prevent misrepresentations of facts. They may not totally change community perceptions of police, but they will at least give us a starting ground for having these conversations to dig deeper, which is really important. They may not show all of the necessary context and viewpoints for understanding a situation. The camera camera, we don't want the camera to see more than what the officer can see. We want the officer to be able to testify in court as to what he or she saw, and the camera should not have a supersonic eye. We know that the end, it may not end the need for witness statements, contacts, or testimony, but it gives us great evidence in many, many cases and helps us along the way. So cameras are creating stronger policies that will propel communities forward with their agencies. Further communications, Shannon talked about our EEACs. These groups are always looking at surveillance. It's a common concern around community members, especially in over or under police communities, and folks that have experienced this trauma over a period of time. Body-worn cameras can facilitate additional resources like crisis counselors or social workers via live streaming and two-way communications. And body-worn camera technology provides endless opportunities for innovation in the field. Rick is such an amazing person because he's always thinking about how are we saving lives? How are we saving community lives? How are we saving police lives? And so that camera will evolve to fit the needs of community and police for generations to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much for Regina for just kind of reviewing that with us. Now we're going to pivot into what do body-worn cameras look like and mean in Columbus, Ohio. So we have Evan Bates that you guys met earlier. He's going to do a quick briefing over the new body-worn camera program that you guys recently adopted and the features that come along with it.
Hey, thanks, Shannon. So again, Evan Bates, the goal here is to give a quick briefing, just so you understand, again, the goal of the technology, what the technology does and does not accomplish, and then what Columbus has to paint a better picture of what's going to be happening in your community. So before we kind of get into that, just having a really, really high level discussion about the body-worn camera timeline. It's really as simple as technology evolves, it just goes with the time. When we first came up with the idea of a body-worn camera, the goal was essentially just recording as much as possible to reflect what the officer did. As time evolved, we improved better battery technology, resolution got better, and we actually got to change that philosophy a little bit to the current generation cameras you all have today. It's a better reflection of everything that happens today. I don't want you to think of body-worn cameras as just video. If you do that, that's actually a little bit short-sighted. If you look at it as a collection of everything that's happened, hey, what words were being used? Hey, have AI dictate X, Y, and Z words. Was use of force dictated? Have the camera dictate, hey, maybe tasers were drawn, maybe you didn't have to go that far. Having context before we actually activate that camera. What was the 90-second lead up prior to the camera activation? Automating all that entire process. Can we tie in that camera to your in-car system so officers don't have to press multiple buttons to record video? Again, these are just a lot of discussions over the past decade where I've really seen the advancements of the body-worn camera. So to start off, Columbus has the current generation of body-worn cameras. So this is actually the Axon Body 3 right here. For the sake of simplicity, there's really two operations that any camera user has to do. So again, I have a camera right here. Green just means it's ready to record. You double tap, that starts to record. You hold that button for about 4 to 5 seconds, it stops the recording. If you all are able to just understand, like for all of our officers, if they're able to just follow that policy, you have a fully functional body-worn camera program. I'm not talking about settings. I'm not talking about making sure it's in specific modes. I'm just saying double tap to start, hold a second, 5 seconds to stop. The camera will do the rest. Now, what's really important to understand here is that these cameras' goal is to reflect policy. That is the camera's goal. So what that means here is if the policy, because Columbus has our Axon Fleet 3 system as well, is, hey, all cameras need to be activated when I turn on the light bar of the car, I'm sorry. The car being, again, just the flashing lights of the police car. If we turn on those lights, all cameras need to record. What our cameras allow us to do is just automatically activate that body-worn camera. So again, light bar cuts on for the car, body-worn camera wirelessly activates. The officer is not focused on the technology. The officer is just focusing on doing their job. The camera is just reflecting that. At the end of the incident, they hold that button for about 5 seconds again and stops the recording and they go on about their day. And by having these automated tools, which we call Axon Signal, we really kind of remove the doubt or the accidental activation or not activating of cameras. Again, when you're in the heat of the moment amongst all these situations, just being able to record is really the goal here. Now, I preach about the simplicity, but this camera does have a lot of integrated, I would just say sensors to really enhance that experience. GPS, AI. I know AI is one of the buzzwords of 2023 here. We're using AI to clear up the picture so we can get a better reflection of what's going on. Using AI to go from a really, really bright area to a really, really dark area and having the camera adjust as quick as possible versus having an overexposed or underexposed image. Again, that's how we use AI to better reflect what's going on here. Now, one thing you will notice about our cameras is we don't talk about 8K or anything enhanced like that because that is not the goal. Again, human eyes, we don't watch in 8K. The camera's goal is to reflect what the human can see. So we actually use sensors to automate that process as much as possible, but still keeping the image honest as to what everybody sees. And then back to the simplicity, we have what we call the dock and walk workflow. So really an officer's day is this: they go into the station and these cameras are docked in what we call this 8x dock. And that's what we have the image of on screen here. Officer removes their camera, it's ready to go. There is no on switch. They just put it on their mount and then they go about their business. Now, remember, we talked about those automated sensors. So if I activate my police car lights, the camera's gonna cut on. All I have to do is just hit the stop recording. That's literally it. At the end of my day, I go to this dock again. I dock my camera. We charge the camera. We offload all of the video. We reflect any settings updates, and then we check for diagnostics to make sure that the camera is working healthy. Again, I cannot overstate the simplicity of this from an officer perspective. We just talked about two things that has to be done: activating and deactivating the camera. Everything else happens in the background. Now, just because it's simple and just because we have those sensors, we still have some goals. Keep in mind with evidence integrity. It doesn't matter your position, whether you're in the police department, whether you're an officer or all the way to the top, whether you're an Axon employee, whether you're an Axon developer. It is absolutely impossible to delete videos off of body-worn cameras, and that is by design. We have what we call the chain of custody. The moment that we dock that camera and we offload that video, we want to make sure that even if a video later is shared or copied or deleted, that that's accounted for. And due to that, we have to make sure that all these videos are offloaded from the cameras as quick and securely as possible. And that's one thing that we'll talk about later in the talks here. So again, just kind of round out the camera feature for a second, the buffering feature. A great example, and I have this camera with me right now. It's not recording, as you remember. As I double tap it, that starts the recording for the camera side. But context is extremely important. If we just have the moment where the camera starts recording from the incident onwards, you're missing the lead up. Maybe there was a user said something. Maybe there was an object that was seen. Again, we really, really need that context. So we have what we call the rolling buffer, up to 5 minutes of no audio, continuous recording. So the moment that is activated, you have a really, really good picture as to why that body on camera was activated. So that's extremely important. Video recall. Again, we understand that there's times where the camera, maybe the officer doesn't have the ability to activate, or maybe just we don't have a sensor that automatically activates the recording. And what Axon tells all of our camera users is to just do your job first. These cameras have what we call video recall, which allows admins after the fact to take that camera, plug it into a computer, and get a rolling 24-hour recall of anything that happened with audio and video. So let's just say it's 10:30 a.m. Again, I'm outside, I'm walking, and then all of a sudden an event happens. I need to run rescue somebody. The last thing I want to do is worry about activating my camera. I go, I help rescue. After the event, I go to my supervisor, I give them the camera, and they're able to retroactively go in time and extract that audio and video. Again, making sure that we always have everything accounted for, even on those times where we can't necessarily plan it. And then lastly, we have tools on the other end. Again, capturing data is one thing, but then organizing it and efficiently sorting through it is another. And that's what we have our transcription and Axon evidence tools, which I'll talk about next. So this screen right here, there's a lot going on here, and I'm going to talk about it one by one. The first thing I want you to notice is at the bottom, this is a 47-minute video. And as much as we, like to think that people have great intentions, the reality is, myself included as well, there is no way I'm going to be able to watch a 47-minute video and accurately reflect every single thing that happened. That's just human nature. That is something that's just universal amongst people. And so what we decided to do is we created tools to really help speed up that effect. Below the 47-minute marker, you actually see some markers on a time strip. I call it similar to the ads in YouTube, or before I press play, I know X, Y, and Z events happened. Now, this could be light bar activation from a police car. This could be taser activation. Again, these are automatically generated markers so the camera out in the field has the ability to say, hey, officer such and such turned on their light bar and that's all recorded. Or, hey, they had this device which activated the camera. Again, we preach about the simplicity, but we also preach about how these cameras honor policy. And this is a great way for the user, before they even press play, to know, hey, I know that there's use of force in this video, or I know there's a light bar in this video from our police car system. Now, again, of course, we can press play, but if you look to the right here, we have an automatic transcript. This is an AI-backed transcript, and the purpose of this, and really just from our research, says that it's a lot easier for us to read and look for things that matter to us versus just watching for a video and waiting for something to happen. So while we play this video on the left here, on the right, we're going to go word for word with actually the blue letters for the person who is speaking. Now, this transcript has the ability to separate speakers. So the officer speaking for one, maybe the citizen speaking with the other, being able to jump back and forth. This system has the ability to identify keywords. We're not going to let a word like gun or weapon just sit in the transcript. We're actually going to proactively notify the watcher of the video saying, hey, these words are said in this video X amount of times. Click here and it's going to take you directly to that portion of the video. So again, we're pointing out things which we believe the user may find of interest. We're also going to use this AI detection for things like Miranda rights. Again, the system's going to tell you, hey, Miranda rights were read in this video before you even have to press play. Again, we're providing a summary of this entire video just before you hit play. And that's really important, is when you think of how many officers that you have and the amount of video that you have, these summaries are extremely imperative when it comes to getting a really good gauge of the health of your program, the language being used, the equipment being out in the field, and then lastly, being able to read the transcripts from there. Axon Signal, again, this is just Axon devices talking to Axon devices. I'm not going to speak too much about this, but one thing to kind of keep in mind here is that if 2 or 3 or 4 body-worn cameras are recording at the same time, kind of like YouTube recommended videos, Axon is going to tell you. So this allows you to say, hey, maybe this video has just like a bad perspective. Maybe we can't get the whole perspective, but we have 3 other cameras recording at the same time. Let's time sync these and watch these all at the same time to get a better illustration of what's going on. Again, we're having the evidence that already exists just bubble to the top to give end users, again, a better perspective to see what's going on. Evidence.com, this is just where our all of the evidence stores. Real quick thing to note here, because again, security is something that we could speak about all day for. The important highlights are that this is built amongst the Microsoft Azure Government Cloud, I'm sorry. Geo-redundant, multi-factor authentication, CJIS compliance. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But rest assured that your data is safe. Now, one thing to kind of keep in mind when it comes to downtime of our system is, in my 5 years of being at Axon, we had about 10 seconds of downtime in 2020, and that's the most downtime I've ever experienced. And that was actually a direct reflection of the increase of usage following May 2020. So when you think about how this system is built, it's built to scale. There's never going to be a situation where X amount of body-worn cameras, X amount of people playing video at the same time is going to kill it, because the system is designed to just scale up and throw resources as you see fit. One more other thing to keep in mind too is the audit trail. Every single video that is accounted for and every single device is accounted for. If a device is faulty, we have a bulletproof audit trail that will say such. If the evidence was recorded due to X, Y, and Z reasons, we have a bulletproof audit trail that indicates such. And those audit trails are impossible to delete, again, regardless of who you are. So even if, let's just say, a video was recorded and it stops midway, we know the specific reasons as to why that happened versus playing a guessing game. So that is the high level. Again, we could talk about this all day, but I just wanted to give you insight of what you all have, the method behind the technology, and really our goals as a company, as well as with your Columbus program. So I appreciate your time. And again, I'm happy to stick around for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Evan. And we just wanted to just name a few next steps or how to stay connected with Axon and our team. We do have a mailing list that we are building out and rolling out at the end of this year. So if you're interested in learning more about products and projects that we're doing, job opportunities, virtual events, and things that we're doing across the globe, feel free to email your contact info to ileslie@axon.com. I'll make sure that Lucy has this email address if you guys miss it. But that's pretty much it for us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I just want to say thank you again to Councilmember Remy, AC Bacher, the Axon team, and all of you. It's been a pleasure the past year working with the City of Columbus on this project, and really an honor, again, as a resident of the city, working with you all, and then coming back a third time through this virtual event. You guys have just been an absolute pleasure. So I'm going to kick it off to Regina and Rick if you guys want to close out with any closing remarks. And I believe after that, there's a Q&A. And I also want to thank Lucy as well. She's been a pleasure to work with as well as we've been building out this project.
I'm very thankful. You all have helped us do what we are trying to do, which is connect your agencies, your technology, and your community concerns. Rick? You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Hey, I would just say we're honored to be a part of the community in Columbus and on the team with the local public safety, helping to just try to improve the safety for everybody. So with that, I'd be delighted to hang around for some questions.
Regina, Shannon, and Evan, great job really highlighting some of the key things that make Axon special and a great partner with the City of Columbus. I'd like to move into sort of a question and answering period at this point. And so for our viewers, if you have any questions, please put them in the Facebook or YouTube chat. My team is watching and we'll be able to convey those questions to the Axon team, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. But I'm particularly interested. I'll start off with a question related to artificial intelligence. Obviously, you talked a little bit about, what today brings with AI and how it's utilized within the technology. But I'm a little curious, with all the discussion that's going on with AI, what's the future hold? What do you envision next, AI being able to completely help the technology and what we see as a product, and what are concerns what are some of the concerns that could be on the horizon with AI?
Got it. So I'll take this one. AI certainly is having a breakout moment, particularly around these large language models like ChatGPT, where they're very good now at generating text responses or even generating images and things. So as we think about AI, we focus on a couple areas. The main thing we focus on is, first, let's do no harm. So anywhere we're going to use AI, how can we use it to increase efficiencies or help people do their jobs better while maintaining human oversight, so that we're not taking on areas where AI could lead to catastrophic risks. That's one reason why a few years ago we said, look, we're not going to put face recognition technology in our body cameras for now. Now, it's not to say we never would, but the state-of-the-art of technology, at least as of 2 years ago when we last looked at that issue, face recognition was not sufficiently reliable. It had different reliability rates on different genders and different ethnicities, so it had an inherent bias in performance. And it opened some really challenging privacy questions about, when and if a body camera could recognize a face, when should that be used? And we could go very deep in that, but I would just say we ultimately concluded, that's an area we're not going to touch until the technology gets more reliable and we have time to sort out those privacy issues. So that's an example of what we didn't do. Let me give you one that I'm most excited about coming in the near future. And that is, a body camera is used to record an entire incident, right? That is probably the best record you could have of an incident, is the recording of what actually happened. Well, police also have to write reports about these incidents. And it turns out, when we talk to police agencies, police officers spend about half of their time as data entry people. They sit at computers typing up reports. Well, that's not adding a ton of value to the community, right? We want them out doing the job, not stuck at a computer writing up reports. So we believe these new AI models, and we have a team working on this now, we're going to be running experiments. Could we allow the officer at the end of a body camera to just dictate a quick synopsis of what happened and then transcribe that body camera and do the first draft of the report for the officer? Again, I'm calling it a draft because these models are not going to be perfect, but we actually think they could probably write a police report probably as good or better than the average police officer, just based on the capability these systems have. The thing is, the officer would still have to review it and sign off and make edits that it's their report and they're going to take legal responsibility. But we think that might cut report writing time by as much as 50%, which on a practical basis could mean it would be like increasing your police force. They would be able to spend that 25% of their time now doing the value-added job of policing as opposed to writing reports. So that's an example where we think the technology could be used safely, where nobody's going to get hurt if it makes a mistake, and there's still human oversight, where just the tool to assist officers in doing these more mundane tasks.
Excellent. Thank you. Lucy, do we have any questions right now?
Not at this time.
Okay. Let me see what other things I had on my list. Maybe I'll throw it over to AC Bodker. I want to get some feedback and perspective on what Axon's technology has meant to our police department. What so far, what have you seen? I mean, one of the things I notice is the clarity, the sound, much improved over our previous partnership, and certainly one of the key reasons that I think we made this switch to begin with. But I just wanted to hear some of your perspective. You're on mute, I think.
Together using a phone here, but can you hear me okay? So
I think it's the Wi-Fi in the within ours.
Let me turn off the video and see if that helps.
Okay.
How about that? Any better?
Pretty clear right now.
Okay, perfect. Let me some perspective, if I could. We issued 1,804 Axon Body 3 body cameras. Those body cameras, as of 2 days ago, have captured 874,066 videos. That's quite a bit of video footage. What that means for us and for our officers is those body cameras allow supervisors on the street some ease in reviewing that video footage, investigative investigations or criminal investigations. Our detective bureau have taken another step, which I love, using the Axon body camera. They will mine video at crime scenes from officers that may have responded to that scene earlier in the day, earlier in the week, to identify violent suspects. They also utilize the evidence.com feature to create a QR code that they will pass out to the public, and they say, hey, QR code, take you directly to evidence.com, where you can provide video footage your phone or private cameras related to this crime. They are seeing incredible collaboration with the community related to tips on crimes using evidence.com. Additionally, there's an ease of sharing video evidence. Prosecutors, judges, defense attorneys, the evidence.com hub was created between Columbus Division of Police and prosecutorial folks. Really, it's much better than this technology, which was burning videos on CDs. So both ease of use, accessibility, and the public using this technology is fantastic.
Excellent. I definitely see it from the public's perspective, and certainly see it. Know that just talking with Chief and all of you all, it's been really, really great. What else is on the horizon? Like, I know you talked about your moonshot, but is there something that you're working on that, you know, from a technology perspective, that you think will be a game changer? Even a little hint at something in the future that maybe no one else knows?
Yeah, so two things there. The one that I think in the near term is the biggest game changer is actually this shift to live streaming or live video, much like, you know, imagine this presentation if we did it with just an old conference call, right? Where community members could hear us all talk, but they couldn't have seen any of the visuals that we were presenting. So we've all gotten used to this idea that communication now is audio and visual, but our police officers are basically out using a walkie-talkie, for lack of a better term, as their primary communication device. And what that means is dispatchers and command staff, anybody who's not on scene, has a pretty low understanding of what's actually happening because it's only what they can interpret from, you know, some pretty hectic radio traffic. I think this idea of a body camera evolving into, again, I'm a science fiction guy, so it's almost like that scene from Aliens back in the day when, you know, they had the command staff able to see the video feeds from, in that case, all of his soldiers. In this case, I think it would be, you know, if there's a critical event unfolding, that not only could dispatchers see it, but might say, hey, we need a commander to see what's happening here. This thing's escalating. So I think that's probably the biggest near-term change. And I talk about it as the future because the tech is already here. In fact, you know, even the cameras we have in Columbus are capable of doing that. But that is a big shift organizationally. And so those things tend to take time. But we're seeing that one take hold. The next one, if you want to look over the horizon, when I talked about how we can reduce the number of gun deaths in policing incidents, I talked about making taser weapons longer range and more effective. So that's something we're doing. The other aspect of it is to talk about the use of robotics and drones. So when we think about it, the state of the technology in the world today is if we have a person with a gun, like a mass shooter incident, if we've got a person with a gun shooting at people, the way we stop that is we send in more people with more guns and we have a gunfight. Very simplistically, that's the world we live in. And no matter how effective we make a non-lethal weapon, like even if we could give you Captain Kirk's phaser from Star Trek, as I've talked to police officers, they say, look, I'm not going to take even a phaser to a gunfight. It's not reasonable to say I should risk my life up against somebody with a lethal weapon and me not be using a lethal weapon. But when we change the equation and we say, well, what if it wasn't you personally going through the door in that high-risk situation? What if we sent in a small drone or a robot that would be capable of interacting with somebody and potentially incapacitating them? Then it flips 100%, where police officers say, oh, sure, if I'm not asked to put my life on the line, I would be willing to try lots of other things short of lethal force. Now, that's going to be something that will ultimately be controversial because I think people will rightly have concerns about how do we make sure the technology is used appropriately and not overused. Ultimately, my answer to that would be, if you think about it today, when we send a human being out into the world, whether it's a police officer or anybody else, with a gun or a taser or any other weapon, you have no organizational control over them, meaning they can do whatever they want with that gun. Now, you can punish them the next day if they do something wrong, but in the moment, that one person is making all the decisions. When we start talking about a connected device like a drone or a robot, that actually means we have a video feed, right? Somebody's controlling that device. That means we can actually inject organizational decision-making. What I mean by that is you could have a supervisor watching the same live feed that has to sign off on how it's being used. We see this in the United States military, for example, right? When we have a soldier in a foxhole, they're making decisions while they're scared for their own safety. But a drone operator is actually able to take their time, be more careful. And in fact, drone decisions are made using teams of people, sometimes including the President of the United States, right, in high profile missions. And I think there's some examples there where we said, look, if instead of the only thing that we're able to do in a high risk scenario is send our brothers and sisters and sons and daughters in bulletproof vests through the door, putting their own lives at risk, that is a recipe for somebody to get hurt or killed, whether it's the officers or the person on the other side, because everybody is scared, right? Their adrenaline is surging, lives are on the line, and by default, people are armed with lethal weapons. So when I look out over the horizon, I see a big change coming. When we know it's high risk, we're going to slow things down in the future. And rather than sending a team through the door with guns, we'll send in a piece of equipment that, if that gets shot and destroyed, fine. We'll, obviously that's easy to take care of. We can take a lot more risk. We wouldn't ask that of a human being. People are never disposable. So that to me is, I think, the biggest change coming in the next 10 years or so.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I know this has been a concern, especially within the Black community and NAACP, and that. Talk a little bit about license plate readers and that technology that's built into the cameras. I know we have it. From my conversations, it's been it's utilized with stolen vehicles and felony warrants. But if you could speak to that a little bit further, that would be good.
Yeah, I feel like I've been taking up a lot of airtime. Regina, do you want to take this one, or would you rather
I think it would be good if you set the foundation for where you've seen them, how you've seen them work. And then Shannon and I and Evan, if you're interested, can talk a little bit about community concerns.
So license plate readers are a great example of a technology that, can be used for purposes that are very helpful. They've been used to find abducted people. They've been used to find stolen vehicles. They've been used to find people that are wanted with high level, warrants, like wanted for murder or other serious crimes. However, they also have the potential of just recording people's whereabouts and having massive data sets about where we all go, where we park our cars. You could track a license plate, and if you have readers pervasive in a community, you could potentially develop a breadcrumb trail and learn a lot about somebody. And so as we looked at entering this space, I think Regina talked about our Equity and Ethics Advisory Council, and we had a previous version of this that we called the AI Ethics Board that's kind of evolved. But the point is, we went to these advisors and we said, look, we want you to help us understand what are the privacy concerns, and then how do we create a system that's got balance to mitigate those concerns so that we can take advantage of the benefits. One of the benefits from our perspective, actually putting in a car, if you've ever sat in a car with an officer on a ride along, in a lot of places, they're typing in, as they're driving, they're typing in license plates to search them, which is exactly what I teach my teenage daughter not to do, right? When you're driving, don't be trying to operate a device. And so we just saw that as even a basic safety mechanism. Let's if officers are regularly running plates anyways, that should be something we could automate in a much safer way. So the camera just does that and people aren't typing and trying to read feedback while they're driving. Now, to talk about some of the safeguards we put in place, a lot of it comes down to just fundamental controls about, for example, how long the data is retained. So we have a default that we say a default is 30 days. Obviously, an agency can change that to a different setting. And we've set up a transparency dashboard so that agencies can actually publish those settings to their community, so the community understands how that data, how long it's being retained. And then also things like search criteria. We've built a number of safeguards. It's been a while since I've been in the details of exactly what those safeguards are, but things like that somebody going in has to be authorized to be running searches in the database. They've got to have a case number that's related to the search that they're doing so that we know this is an authorized kind of search. And agencies can also set up where you may need supervisory authorization so we can avoid, the potential misuses where we've all heard cases where like an officer may want to go like run a plate, for example, on an ex-spouse's new significant other or some other personal misuse of that data. So building a lot of the logging and authentication controls so that we can control who's able to do searches, logging those searches so the agency then has a record and they can go back and look at what types of searches are being done. And then also not retaining that data, indefinitely, but keeping it long enough to be able to have it relevant to solve crimes, but not keeping it forever.
And I think, and Rick's kind of standing up this community impact team, what he's doing, I don't think he would take this credit, but I think it's true, is kind of modeling for departments what they could do. Like our team is there to say, Rick, have you thought about this? These are the communities that we're going to bring in to get you expert advice. But Rick only has so much bandwidth in terms of policy. You don't want Axon to make your policy decisions. Your city, Councilman Remy, and the police agency and the community needs to decide what those policies look like for your city. And what we're modeling is quick and intense conversations with community prior to adopting technology. That's what we're doing. Like Rick, before he's adopting technology, is saying, Regina's team, community, what are these things we need to work out? And I think agencies can do that same thing. And Shannon, I don't know if you and Evan had more to say about that.
You hit it really clearly. And I believe Councilmember Remy and AC Backer, you may have said this, and I've heard it about the committee you guys put together when evaluating what new technology you wanted to put in place. Like these are things that we really are, encouraging cities and agencies to do. Just like we're doing here at Axon, is every part or every step of this process of new technology adoption is just continuously exploring ways to involve community. One, it's just a great way to execute transparency, but also doing it together. And when we're doing it together, we can, all feel accountable to each other. And I think at Columbus, you guys have been doing a great job of like continuously building that out of how can we talk to community, like where can we insert their voice here? And it's been cool to watch for sure.
I'll add one comment just because I'm passionate about the technology of ALPR is the way that Axon's doing it is actually fundamentally different versus a lot of companies in the industry. Your APR data within the city of Columbus stays within the city of Columbus. The Axon is not going to sell that data to other third-party companies. And if you actually look at the industry as a whole, that is something that I think up to this point is actually a radical shift of what Axon is doing. The two other things which I actually think Rick spoke about, the transparency portal. You don't have to take the police department's word for it if you don't want to. Go to the transparency portal. It will tell you the amount of vehicles collected, how many, the retention policies, what is collected, what is not collected. That was, I think, a fundamental shift, even going into ALPR, because we knew how sensitive it could be. We wanted to kind of be more forthcoming about everything that was going to be collected. And then lastly, from a detective perspective within the police department, which is really important to understand with Axon Evidence, is not everybody has the keys to the castle. You only see what your job dictates that you see. So while maybe 100 cars are collecting license plate data, maybe only 5 or 6 users actually have the ability to search for that license plate data within that instance. And then keeping to the mind the safeguards, every search is going to require a reason. That's actually a mandatory field that cannot be skipped, and that is accounted for life. So the whole point being is that, again, we understand obviously the privacy implications of it, but when you take those privacy implications and then actually look what ALPR can do, especially with a connected vehicle, let you know immediately about stolen vehicles, lets you search passively in the background for things that are going on. My personal opinion is that I think overall it's actually just raising the footprint of everything versus being a detriment.
Argument that it honestly lessens the opportunities for profiling because you're actually pulling over the car that really has an issue versus like looking for every red car. If you're looking for you know what I mean? It's like there's some significant advantages to it. But again, I think there's still a little bit of a gap in the community of, you know, getting people to feel comfortable with that. Because like you stated, it's important that we don't use it to try to track people every step of the way.
Yeah, one other thing I would say is we've also been careful to make it so agencies can be quite transparent about what types of things they're alerting on. I'll give you one example that's a hot button issue is immigration related alerts. Now that's something where, you know, people have strong opinions on whether or not local police should be getting involved in, you know, immigration related matters. And that's something where, look, as a corporation, it is not our place to try to dictate policy. That is the job of elected officials in a democracy. It's our job to make the technology so that it's easy and obvious for elected officials and police officials to make those decisions and then implement them, you know, relative to the norms and values of that community. And then, of course, that goes up and down the scale for you know, different types of, we tend to see, you know, where there's broad alignment, the community and frankly, police officers both tend to want to use alerts for high level crimes that are going to be, you know, impactful to the community and frankly, a good use of the officer's time so that they're getting alerted on, you know, high level things that really matter and not getting, you know, zillions of alerts on, you know, unpaid parking tickets or, you know, other lesser type issues.
I'm going to throw it to AC Bodker. Mark Carter's going to unmute your phone so I think you'll be able to hear.
Unmute him. I don't think it'd play nice with his phone.
Sometimes the best intentions. But I was just going to ask, you know, like if you had any further, yeah, that's good. Further comments about our policy with the division. Did you ask me something? By the way, we don't seem to have this problem with Zoom. It's WebEx and some of our technology. I don't know what it is, but it can be frustrated. This isn't the first time it's happened.
I feel like I'm juggling. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Sir, I missed the question. Yes.
I was just asking if you had any further comments about our policy with the division and LPRs. But I think we got most of it out, so I am going to just go ahead and wrap up because it's been a great conversation today, and I certainly want to thank the Axon team, Rick, Regina, Shannon, and Evan, for your partnership. Your commitment to engaging our residents as part of this partnership stands out in this field. It is important as we continually ask our residents to stack hands with us, our partners, our community leaders, our youth, faith leaders, and so many others as we define what the future of public safety is for the city of Columbus. I'd like to thank CTV and our technology wizard, Mark Carter, for their assistance today. Thank you to my team for putting this together, Lucille Frank, Kaylin Pittman. I couldn't do any of this without you. Public Safety Week has been an outstanding success, and this is just one more addition to in this success column. So thank you to our public that tuned in today and participated. We certainly appreciate it. This is what it's all about. And I just want to wish everyone a very happy and safe 4th of July. Have a great day.